That night the sky wouldn't stop crying. Rain hit the windows in angry bursts, and thunder rolled like a warning I refused to hear. My husband, Mark, had just left for his night shift when the knock came, 3 soft raps that didn't belong to a stranger. I opened the door, and there he was, Daniel, Mark's colleague. He was soaked through, eyes shadowed, holding a folder against his chest. "Sorry," he said, voice trembling. "Something happened at the site. I didn't know where else to go. If I'd known what that knock would set in motion, I might have locked the door, turned off the lights, and pretended I wasn't home. But I didn't. And, because of that choice, everything changed. Stay with me till the end," I whisper, because what started as a simple act of kindness became the hardest lesson of my life. Mark and Daniel had worked together for years at an engineering firm. They'd been through long projects, late nights, and countless stories about deadlines and impossible clients. I'd seen Daniel at company dinners, polite, reserved, the kind of man who never stayed too long after dessert. That evening, he looked different. Something raw edged his calm. I offered him a towel and made tea while he tried to explain. "There was an argument at work," he said. I couldn't face going home yet. He didn't tell me what it was about, but his hands shook when he reached for the cup. I should have called my husband, let him know Daniel was here. But part of me thought it was harmless, 2 colleagues, one needing a moment to breathe. And maybe, beneath that reasoning, there was something else, a quiet loneliness I hadn't dared to name. Mark and I had been drifting. Years of schedules, bills, and quiet dinners had replaced laughter with silence. He was a good man, responsible, predictable, but the spark we once had flickered like a candle almost out. Daniel talked that night in a way Mark hadn't in years. He listened when I spoke about my art classes, about feeling invisible in my own home. "People forget how heavy silence can get," he said softly. I nodded, surprised that he understood. When the rain eased, I told him he could stay until morning. He thanked me, exhaustion carving lines around his eyes. As I walked him to the guest room, a strange feeling settled in my chest, half fear, half something I didn't want to admit. Mark came home early. Daniel was still asleep in the guest room, and I tried to explain quickly before Mark reached the hallway. He came by during the storm. There was a problem at work. Mark stared, confused but trusting. "You should have called." "I know," I said. I didn't think. The sound of Daniel's footsteps cut me off. He apologized, thanked Mark for the hospitality, and left. For days after, the air in our house felt heavier. Mark didn't accuse me of anything, but the look in his eyes changed, like he'd seen a crack in something he thought was solid. Weeks passed. Daniel stopped by once or twice, always on some errand or to drop off documents. Each visit lasted only minutes, but those minutes unsettled me. He had a way of looking at me that made words stumble. One afternoon, he came by to return a book I'd lent him. We stood by the doorway, the world between us small and charged. "I shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "I know," I whispered, but neither of us moved. A car horn from the street snapped the moment apart. He handed me the book, nodded once, and left. I spent the rest of the day cleaning a spotless kitchen, trying to scrub away feelings that refused to go. Mark noticed the change. "You've been somewhere else lately," he said one night. "Just tired," I lied. But guilt grows like ivy. It wraps around everything good until it strangles it. I started avoiding Daniel, ignoring calls from unfamiliar numbers, keeping busy with errands that led nowhere. Still, thoughts of him slipped in, the way he listened, the warmth in his voice, the version of myself I became around him, alive, seen. Then came the company dinner. Mark insisted we go. Daniel was there, sitting across the room. Our eyes met once, and that was all it took for Mark to notice. He said nothing that night, but the drive home was silent, every streetlight flashing like an interrogation lamp. When we got home, Mark turned off the engine but didn't move. "Is there something I should know?" he asked. His tone wasn't angry, it was worse. It was calm. I wanted to tell him everything and nothing all at once. "There's nothing," I said, voice breaking. "But I'm not the same person I used to be." He sighed, staring through the windshield. "Then maybe we need to find out who we've become." That night, we slept in the same bed but felt oceans apart. The storm that had started weeks ago had found its way inside our walls. A few days later, Daniel left the firm. He sent Mark a brief email wishing him well, and he left me a letter in our mailbox. No name, no return address, just my name on the envelope. Inside were 2 sentences. "Thank you for reminding me that kindness still exists. I'm sorry if my presence caused you pain." I read it twice before tearing it into pieces. But the ache didn't disappear. Time passed. Mark and I went to counseling. We rebuilt slowly, piece by piece. Some nights, we'd sit in silence, and I'd catch him looking at me with cautious hope, the kind you offer someone who's broken your heart but still holds it. I never saw Daniel again. Sometimes, on rainy nights, I think of that knock on the door and wonder if everything that followed was punishment or destiny. We survived, but something in me changed forever, not because of what happened between us, but because of what it revealed, how fragile love can be when neglected, and how easy it is to lose yourself trying to feel seen. When people talk about betrayal, they think it begins with lies. But sometimes it starts with silence, with things left unsaid, with hearts that drift apart while still sleeping under the same roof. If you've ever stood at that doorway between right and wrong, you know the weight of it. And if you're listening to this now, wondering what I learned from all of it, it's simple. Love survives only when it's fed with honesty, even when the truth hurts. Thank you for watching my story. If it touched you, leave a comment below. Tell me what you think about forgiveness and second chances. Subscribe for more emotional true stories, and remember, sometimes the hardest lessons become the ones that save us.